Hey guys, out for a walk in nature. I'm very blessed to live in the country with my papa, and so as I walk through these trails of dead leaves with dead trees all around, because this forest was ravaged by a plague that we are now being ravaged by too. Now, I am making this video because for those of you that know me, you'll know that the last year I had a pretty crazy experience that sent me into a system that is designed to keep society safe. And at the time, I understood that I was not able to present myself as a safe person because the information was coming to me and through me too quickly for me to be able to filter it, which isn't necessarily my role, though often we feel like we need to have done that process before we go live. And that is how you can choose to survive, or you can thrive by simply being willing to say you don't have to know what is coming out. It's just the responsibility of the viewer to understand how it feels to them. What I know from what I went through myself and then have studied since in terms of Stephen Porges's polyvagal theory is that there is a lot to be said about the nervous system and how it is actually the part of us that determines whether we will fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And when someone is sharing information that does not make us feel safe, we enter into that experience. And there is a teaching I've been listening to from Udemy that I had purchased through Sounds True about angry faces was one of the references of a story from an inmate who was using his TV as a light to read a book. And on the TV screen he could see some angry face on there, and so he called down to one of the other prisoners and asked what was going on, and they said it's the Ku Klux Klan. And so he said off and went back to his reading. And then a while later he looked up again and saw another angry face, and so he asked who that was, and they said that it was Greenpeace. And then he went back to his reading, and a while later came to another angry face when he looked up and asked who that was. And this time they said it was a political leader advocating for a change. And so as he shared and I wade through this dirt and muck, I say to you that angry faces do not make us feel safe, because it actually triggers the nervous system to fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Fawn means pretend. And how many of us have been pretending in order to fit into a system we're scared of? There is the fight, that's obvious, the flight of get up and go, and then there is the freeze, which when I was in the system that feeds itself, I could see some patterns, and while I projected them onto people that didn't necessarily deserve it, in terms of the staff that were working there, because I was scared and I did not trust them to tell me the truth, and I also did not trust the potential truths that they were telling me. There was one night when a code white had been called, and it was the same day when my most beloved said, "No, I am not helping you get out. You need to be in there because we can't help you, and you need to figure out what's going on." And that was the same night when I'd went to bed early, and half an hour later I heard code white care death over the loudspeaker, and was told that that is when the caretaker has given up, is not willing to help, and that the one in confinement is vulnerable because there is no one left to save them. So when I quote the reference from when the Jewish concentration camps and everyone else that was impacted by those were in full force, and people were coming. There's a saying about at first they came for this group, but I wasn't one of them, so I didn't speak up. And then they came for this group, but I still wasn't one of them, so I didn't speak up. And then they came for these ones, and still not me, so no, not my responsibility. And then they came for me, and there was no one else to speak up. I have been in the system where there is no one left to speak up, because when the family turns against the individual, the tribe turns against the one, which they will when the one threatens the name of the tribe, not just physically, but also reputationally and everything else. When they don't know what to do with that one, they send them into a system to change them, to make them better, because they are the problem, when actually the system itself is the problem that those ones get sent into. The native people and the residential schools are a perfect example. As I wade over a bunch of fallen trees along the path, those are the ones that were lost, both in their lives oftentimes, and also in their culture, their traditions, their sacred ceremony that gave them strength and solace during times of change and transition, which we must as a collective come to understand through understanding it on an individual basis. And I am doing my very best to create my own sacred practices that will help me stay strong during these times when it is required more than ever, because as the biblical parable says, if we build our house on sand, it will fall when the winds and rains come to knock it down. And yet, if we are willing to dig deep and actually build our houses on the solid foundation that lies deep underneath of the sand, which must be sifted away and sorted through, then, my friends, we are able to withstand anything that comes our way. That is analogous for the inner fortitude and strength that we must develop within ourselves in order to withstand the winds of change that will take us to two pathways. And we have a choice which one we are going to choose and where it will lead us, to the home that is known or into the unknown, and to know that no known place is as safe as what they make it seem, and not one of those unknown paths will lead us to where we think it is, because we have no comprehension of where it could go.